What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the H Panel, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and I just wanted to say before we get in, happy Super Bowl Sunday. This take may age like spoiled milk, but I think the Chiefs have this one. Although it's kind of hard to go against a GOAT like Tom Brady. It's kind of like going against LeBron in the playoffs for the NBA. It's probably not a great idea. That being said, I hope you're all enjoying your Sunday and you have a great time, whether you're watching the Super Bowl or just doing your own thing tonight. So for this episode, I'm joined by Nick Troutman. Nick is a world champion professional whitewater kayaker who has been in love with the sport of kayaking since the age of 13. Traveling all across the globe with his professional kayaker wife and his kids, Nick has such an awesome outlook on life and some really awesome experiences to share. I'm super thankful to have had him on for this podcast, and I really wanted to shout out to Nick again for coming on and having this discussion with me. Now, without further ado, guys, before you get into the episode, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars, share with someone who might need to hear this episode. This is a really cool one, and I can't wait for you guys to listen. I'll talk to all of you soon. Peace. I'm Harry Potvin, and this is the H Panel. How have you and your family been doing during this whole thing?
How I'm assuming you're talking about COVID and all that stuff, but
Oh yeah, that little thing.
just that little thing. No, we've been doing pretty well, in all honesty. So I guess this can go deep into a whole bunch of different aspects. But I try to do my best on looking at life through a positive outlook. And so even though it's hard and our whole world got turned upside down like everybody out there, we just kind of adapted, evolved, and decided to overcome. And so we travel on the road. I'm a professional kayaker. We travel around for 6 to 10 months out of the year on the road, different events and all that kind of stuff. We were like halfway across the country when COVID really hit here in the States, and the states started shutting down and everything. So we had to turn around, come back home to Tennessee, and we didn't know what was going to happen. All the events pretty much shut down, canceled, postponed, whatever. I guess not postponed. They all just stopped, like canceled. And then within like 3 days, actually, of being home, a tornado whipped through, crushed our RV, and totaled everything. And it was just like power was out and all that stuff. Luckily, we were pretty close to where the power lines went down, and so they had it back up and running in short period of time. But it was just like a whole mess of mayhem kind of all happened at once. And with that, I just like we tried our best to prepare and do things, but I mainly just tried to look at it with that silver lining, that positive outlook, and be like, okay, well, things could always be worse, and that's something that I try to remind myself to pretty much anytime anything hard happens or anything unpleasant happens in life. um, I remind myself like it could always be worse, and I've been fortunate enough to travel the world through kayaking and go to all sorts of amazing different countries. And with that, I've been to many third world countries, and I've seen like severe poverty and all sorts of situations that it's a very vivid image in my mind that I can like draw to and remind myself like, well, I COVID might be happening, we might be quarantined, we might all the events have been canceled, maybe you're losing income, different things like that, but at least I've got 2 legs and I can walk. At least
Mhm.
I've got my eyes and I can see. At least we've got some food in the fridge, even if the power's out and it's melting. It's like, well, at least we have that opportunity to like eat the food in the fridge versus not having any. Like, I don't know, it just that try regularly to look at the positive things. And I don't know, maybe I'm weird or odd that way, but with that, it makes an opportunity to live a pretty happy life, and to try not to get stressed or I don't know, too overwhelmed with too many things that go on.
Yeah, that's a great way to think. You're definitely going against the grain there. I know a lot of people who don't have that positive outlook, but you're definitely something to look up to. Because I know even like I mention this all the time, but like with the media and everything, uh, like fear and negativity, it sells. So that's all you're gonna
Right.
see. So being able to have that mindset on you while all these things are being pumped out on our screens, on our TVs, and everything is really admirable, man.
And I don't want to say that I'm like this like wise monk in any regard, because first off, I was definitely stressed when this whole thing, like,
Right.
when it hit the fan, I was like watching the news and I was stressed out, and I'm sure was like everybody else, doing all sorts of things that weren't helping um my anxiety, I would say, I guess. But I quickly realized, like, okay, I probably one need to stop watching the news so much. So I'm gonna cut that out because that's not helping me, and it's definitely not helping my stress levels. And then two, I'm gonna just try to, you know, do what I can to focus on that silver lining type thing. Like go for a walk every morning, and when I'm going for a walk, try to reflect on gratitude and the things that I'm grateful for in life, and what we do have going for us and those kind of things. So there's definitely steps that I do, and it's almost like personal hacks. But I also, I mean, I'm definitely not trying to say I don't stress out, and I'm definitely not trying to say I'm not anxious or anything like that, because all that stuff happens to me too. I'm just I do my best to try to recognize it and then try to counteract it with positive thinking, I guess.
Right. Yeah. It's like a little process you do every day when those thoughts come in.
Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely try to stress that to people because I'm the same way. I get in that nasty habit of like the negative thoughts, and then it's like this never ending circle. But if you're able to recognize it and nip it on the butt, then it makes a huge difference.
for sure. Yeah, definitely.
So I wanted to before I get too into some things, I wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself. So you grew up in Ontario, right?
That's correct. Yeah, near the Ottawa River, actually.
That's I'm not near the River, but I'm in Ontario right now. So where did you grow up exactly, and like what made you choose kayaking as a lifestyle?
Well, so I grew up in Beachburg, Ontario, in the Ottawa Valley, and super small town, or I don't know, maybe like a population of like 1,000 people or something like that. And the Ottawa River, kind of flows really close to where I live. My best friend growing up, he lived on the Ottawa River, and so we would go paddle at his place and stuff. But it started with us just being really close friends, and going skiing and playing hockey and doing all sorts of stuff together. And then one summer, uh, he had told me that he was going to go take up kayak school because his dad owned the largest rafting company on the Ottawa River called Wilderness Tours, and they had a kayak school called Ottawa Kayak School. Anyway, so that's what he was going to do for the summer, and we probably weren't going to be able to hang out too much. And I was kind of bummed because we hung out all the time. So I was like, "Oh, bummer." It's like, "Well, you can come try it if you want." And for me, I was like, "Sure, yeah, let's give it a shot. I'm, open for everything." And and I went and tried it, and before going to kayak school, I kind of thought kayaking was what most people probably think of kayaking, these long pointy boats that float down river or meander down a stream or something like that. And when I arrived, I realized that there's these short boats that are like for freestyle and doing tricks and flips. And I was big into skateboarding and snowboarding and skiing and all sorts of different things. And so I was immediately like drawn to this whole freestyle kayaking, which was just amazing. And pretty much within 15 minutes, I was just hooked on kayaking. And it was like that was the summer before high school. So all I would do through high school was just like eat, think, dream, talk of kayaking. I'm sure all of my friends, all of my teachers, everybody, I probably drove them all a little crazy, but I was just totally addicted to the sport. And as far as where I lived, it was not as well known at the time, probably for kayaking. It was well known for rafting and a lot of fishing and stuff like that around there. Um, but Ontario and that section of the Ottawa River is a long section, but that section is almost like the Whistler Blackcomb of freestyle kayaking. Anyway, it's like some of the best whitewater and waves and features and rapids in the entire world, and it's kind of underrated for the most part. And so I really didn't know what we had until later on in life. I started traveling and experience other rivers in other parts of the world to be like, wow, this river really just is that amazing.
Wow, that's awesome, man. My mom used to be a kayaker, and she won't stop talking about it because I mentioned that you were coming on. But she wanted to ask you if you've ever trained in the Gull River in Ontario.
I have, yeah, down in Minden, Ontario, correct?
Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah.
mom used to train in there all the time. She just wanted to ask. It's a little side note. It's not.
No, I've paddled the Gull a fair amount. It's actually it was the little weird dam thing at the very top was kind of like my first ever waterfall, but it's only like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 feet tall. But I thought at the time when I was super young, I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. I'm not even sure if you're still allowed to like run it or not, or whether or not they've like made that illegal. I've got no idea. But we were down on the Gull. Trying to think now, probably 2 years ago, and I was helping teach all sorts of different kids for a TV show called um, what was it called? Ultimate Athlete or something like that. I don't know. And then a kayaker from Ontario ended up winning the whole thing, so it was pretty cool. But yeah,
Damn! Shout out to Ontario. Holy.
yeah.
So the first section I wanted to get into was kind of because you've traveled all around the world for competitions, and for like exploration with your family. So, what was your favorite destination spot that you've gone to, and does that differ between where you've gone individually and where you've gone as with your family?
Um, well, first off, I've been fortunate enough to travel the world, and I have set up my life with my wife. So my wife, Emily, is also a professional kayaker, and the two of us have been traveling together. I mean, since we were dating a long. I mean, we've been married coming up on 13 years. We got married kind of young, and we were dating well before that. So we've been traveling around the world together for a long time. And then once we decided to have kids, we tried to set it up where we would be able to go most places as a family all together. And so again, I've been fortunate enough to kind of take the whole family with me or with us in most places that we would go. Now I've definitely gone to other, I've gone to some places for sure where it's just me or me and some friends and we're doing an expedition or maybe a film shoot or something like that. But the majority of it, I get to travel with my family, which I'm pretty stoked on. And the same goes like with competing and stuff like that in North America. We've got a truck and a trailer that we travel around the country and around North America with. And just the amount that I do travel up until 2020, I just wouldn't be able to do it without my family. I wouldn't be able to manage being away that much. So I would much rather just take everybody with us. Now, to answer your question, where my favorite places are, um, my my go-to answer for that is usually just where my friends and family are because for me, life is just way better when I'm with friends and family. I can go to like what somebody might consider like the coolest destination on earth. But if you're there with a whole bunch of jerks, or if you're there with people that you're not having a good time with, it's not really that good of a time. And vice versa, you can go to your backyard, and many people do this every weekend with some great friends and have a great time. So, my general answer is honestly just going wherever my friends and family are. On top of that, some top places that I've actually been to. I mean, the Zambezi over in Zambia, the Zambezi River that borders the Zambia and Zimbabwe with Victoria Falls. That place is kind of close to my heart for sure. Down in on the Rio Azteca in Mexico, another close to my heart, just because more places that I consider just amazing, it has to do with the great memories that were made there. Do you know what I mean? And those great memories were made because of the friends and family that I was with. So it kind of all ties together. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could list off a whole bunch of different places that I've been that I've got great memories from. It's hard to pinpoint just a couple.
Right. Yeah. That whole point with friends and family is a very important one, I find.
Yeah.
Um, You've had some pretty incredible experience. I can't speak today. So you've
No,
had some
you're all good.
pretty incredible experiences, and you have stories from all these places. And like you've mentioned, you've been fortunate enough to travel the world with your family. That being said, coming from someone who's had firsthand experience in these places that most of us haven't really traveled to, would you say that the media that people here are given portrays these countries in a fair light, or is there something to be said about the quote, "You need to go out and experience it yourself"?
I would I would agree closer with that quote verse and the second part of that statement. I think that there are always places that have danger and whatever in different situations, but like what's going on with 2020 or with media, whatever. The media wants to sell, and for them to sell they need to get attention, and the easiest way to get attention is to alert, big scary thing going on here. And so often I feel different destinations can get a bad rap and get a lot of bad press because of a very small spot and a very few people that are doing likely some really bad stuff. Um, but to say that that entire country is bad because of it, I mean, just America alone. Okay, so if we were to say, oh, there's some crime in Detroit, okay, or some crime in Chicago, or where, like, you pick a big city and you can find places that have crime. Now, if you were to blast that all over the news and say, oh, there was a murder here, never go to America. I mean, nobody's saying that, but they are saying that kind of stuff about other countries, maybe. And again, I'm not trying to say that the stuff on the media isn't correct or isn't the truth, but to generalize the entire country because of some bad things that a certain few maybe people did, it's it's kind of sad because you can go to um, all sorts of different countries and you can find great people and you can find amazing places. And it's, I mean, I don't know, it's sad to think that a small few can ruin it for the many. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So anyway, the gist of your question, I would say, go experience it for yourself. If you're going to a place that is got a bad rap, that is getting some bad media, be wary. Take it with a grain of salt. Know what you're getting into, but I would expect that more likely than not, you're going to have a great time and you're going to meet a lot of great people.
Yeah, 100%. It's like this is a way more minor scale to try to relate to it, but, when I was in high school, way back, there was another high school that, people from my school would go, "Don't talk to them. They're dirty, they're gross, they're like whatever."
Right.
And so our entire time, we fed into that belief, and just without even talking to people from that high school, we said, "We don't mess with them. They're gross, like, they're uneducated," all this stuff. And then we got to, like, prom camping, which was like where all the schools got together and partied for prom, and they were the nicest people ever. And I was like, man, I should not have believed that. I should have just gone and talked to you.
Yeah. I mean, that happens. I mean, and again, I make that mistake. I think we all probably make that mistake to some point. But it's better to, essentially build your own beliefs and get your own experiences than just take, verbatim, word for word, what other people say, because somebody might have a very different experience than you might have, or somebody might experience something different. So somebody might see something happen, or something like that, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it was the worst thing ever. Never go there." Where you might go there and be like, "Yeah, somebody was rude to me and didn't open the door for me." Do you know what I mean? And that's just maybe a far out there example, but it's the same kind of thing, that if you're just only listening to what other people say and never experiencing it for yourself, it's hard to really have an opinion on the matter. You're kind of just following instead of learning for yourself.
Yeah, you're like living in someone else's opinion.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's never really healthy.
I mean, I don't know. It's just I would much rather go and explore and try to experience it for myself, I guess.
Yeah,
Because the same thing, where like, okay, let's just go back to the whole start of this conversation and the start of the podcast. You're asking about, you know, how is my family doing in 2020? It's very easy to say, oh my gosh, this was the worst year ever that we just had. Total destruction, chaos everywhere, world pandemic, da 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 da. Yeah, it's easy to say that, especially if you're only listening to the news. Now, on the
Mhm.
flip side, it's much harder to look at it through a positive light, right? It's much harder to think of it like, okay, well, yeah, I may have been stuck at home in quarantine, but guess what? I learned how to bake bread. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I learned how to play the guitar. That's pretty cool. Like it's there's a yin and yang to every situation. And so if you're not experiencing life through your own, experiences, then you never know whether or not you're missing out, and you never know whether or not you're on that positive outlook of life, or whether or not you're on someone else's negative outlook on life.
Yeah, 1,000%. That's wise words from Nick to all the viewers out there. So I wanted to talk about kayaking, obviously, because for me personally, I have no experience or knowledge in the sport itself. So for those of us not familiar with it, what are the kayaking competitions that you partake in? What are they like? Like, what is the atmosphere around these competitions?
Oh gosh, the atmosphere is super fun. Everybody's really friendly and just, I don't know, everybody gets along and really helpful and stuff like that. It's pretty cool, and I think that comes to the fact that most of these events and just kayaking in general happens in the outdoors, and it's just a really cool group of people, really cool vibe within the sport, and everybody's just friendly. Um, as far as what it actually looks like competing in freestyle kayaking, we've got these short boats that are designed to do flips and tricks. So front flips, back flips, cartwheels, spins, all sorts of different, pretty much any different type of rotation they do them, and each trick has got a different name and a different rotation, all that kind of stuff. And it would almost be like trying to watch a skateboarding event or something like that, where you're getting judged on the difficulty of trick, and then there's a point value for that trick, and then you've got a time limit of, depending on the event, it's usually either 45 seconds or a minute, and it's however many tricks and the difficulty of the tricks, and you're just trying to accumulate the highest score. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it, but the vibe's pretty fun. Everybody's always having a good time, and pretty supportive of each other.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, like I was a like a competitive swimmer for like a little over a decade, so I was trying to relate to it, but like watching the videos, I was like, I can't relate to this at all. It's a whole different outlook, whole different thing.
Yeah.
So with those competitions, what do you um in terms of like getting into the zone? What does Nick Troutman say to himself before he plunges into these whitewater rapids?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, I guess it depends again on the situation. What's going through my head is very different in a freestyle competition versus if I'm going to go run like an 80-foot waterfall or something like that. Um, but most of the time, any situation, I guess, that's a high stress situation, usually what I'm trying to do is relax myself, and it's almost like what I call like a battle of the demons in my mind, where I get these like negative thoughts that come through and be like, "Oh, you can't do this. You're gonna fail. What makes you think that you're gonna be successful on this?" And that can happen again, whether you're kayaking, whether you're starting a business, whether you're gonna ask a girl out on a date. I think these things, or what I again call the demons of the mind, happen to all of us, or at least again, maybe it's just me. I'm just talking about my personal experience, but I imagine that I'm not the only one that has this happen. And so usually it's like this battle that goes on, and I have to like kind of talk myself off the cliff, and be like, no, okay, I've got years of experience. I know what I'm doing. I can visualize the line that I'm trying to hit, or the routine that I'm trying to make, and I try to just talk myself into this confidence side where it's like, no, I've got this, I can do this, I've practiced, I know the line, I know the tricks, and try to just really make it a calm situation. Um, and it kind of also comes back to something that I talk about fairly regularly, but it's essentially the difference of fear versus danger. Whereas fear is something that we all experience, but it isn't necessarily real. That fear is something that's made up in your mind. You're essentially preloading an outcome that doesn't exist. Whereas danger is something that is real and something that we should all be aware of and cautious of. And so, for instance, um, unlikely that we would be fearful to cross the road, right? I mean, maybe some people are. Maybe that's a fear that people have, but most people don't. They're not really afraid to walk across the road. Now, there could be cars coming, so that there is a danger there. Now so that's why we look both ways, right? And then therefore you're kind of you're assessing the danger, the risk, and then you walk across the road. It's the same thing with everything that we do in life and trying to just assess what's fear and what's danger. Um, and then trying to just analyze when there are okay, so for running an 80-foot waterfall, somebody might be like, well, that's dangerous. And you're like, well, you're right, it could be, especially if there's rocks at the bottom. But if I've checked the depth, if I can visualize my line, if I've got, a decade of experience behind me, and I'm feeling in top shape, I'm feeling loose, limber, ready to go, and confident, I have eliminated a lot of the danger, and I feel like I can hit that line just like somebody can walk across the road. Okay, so now it's not really danger. Then it's and then it's like, okay, well, how can I overcome that fear? Again, I talk myself through the situation, be like, okay, well, I can visualize the line. I've got the experience. I've got the skills. I've checked the depth of the pool below. Everything's lining up. I've got all green lights. I'm good to go. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of what I guess the gist of it, the long version of what goes on in my mind.
Man, yeah, no, I can't even I guess because 'cause I've never been there, I can never even imagine trying to fight off that fear if because 'cause I'm afraid of heights. So, like, just hearing 80-foot waterfall, I'm like, "Oh, no, no way."
Well, the irony is, and I don't tell this too often, but when I was a kid, I was both afraid of heights and of water. And
Oh my
and
god.
and so I guess you could say I've taken the fears head on. But essentially, yeah, I try to put myself into situations regularly that are uncomfortable. And so whether that's actually something that I've got a fear of, or whether that's taking a cold shower or bath, or just trying to put myself in situations that are uncomfortable to realize like, okay, this might not be comfortable right now, but is it dangerous or is this all just in the mind? Do you know what I mean? Are there real dangers here, or is this just something in my mind that I'm not enjoying, and so therefore I'm forcing myself out of the situation. And once you realize, like, okay, taking a cold shower for 30 seconds might not be comfortable, or taking one for 5 minutes might not be comfortable, but 30 seconds in, 45 seconds in, you realize like, okay, or immediately you're like, there's no real danger here. This might just suck for a second. And then quickly you realize like, oh, this really isn't that bad, especially if I tell myself, oh, I like this. Oh, this is enjoyable. And then you can like switch the narrative, and then it just changes the whole outlook where then you're like, okay, well, if I can do that, what other fears could I just like check off that maybe have been holding me back? Anyway, that's again all these different like psychological things that I'm constantly doing in my head, and I don't know, maybe I'm just weird that way. Yeah.
So that's like a daily practice you do then kind of to almost it's almost like a mental preparation for these competitions then? Little minor one?
Semi daily practice. Yeah, I would say more often than not. I guess I'd put it this way. Anytime that I have fear of something, I try to regularly tell myself, like, okay, well, maybe we should do this just because you're afraid, like, or different things like that. I regularly try to, I guess, put myself through these, like, I don't know, mental tests more than anything. But
Mhm.
yeah,
So there yeah, there's like there's something to the saying where it's like do one thing a day that scares you. Like it's way to
100%.
combat that
Yeah,
fear. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Um
yeah.
so we already talked about that. So my next question for you, how does the mental preparation for these competitions how do they differ between let's say like a local one and worldwide?
Oh, I mean, it's just you've got the difference, I guess, between the local one and a world event, or global event, or however you want to state it, is the stakes are just higher. The the competition is, more fierce. The It's going to be harder to win, right? So, like, if you're going, think of it this way: that you're playing a game. Any event out there, whether you're, playing NHL hockey, whether you're a chess master, whether you're a professional kayaker or a competitive kayaker, it's all just a game, and you're playing because you enjoy the game. And again, this is just my outlook, but you're playing a game because you enjoy the game. You want to play with others because just like like the reason why you would want to play any game, you want to win the game, and that's part of the fun. When you go against harder and harder competition, the stakes are higher in the sense that it's going to be a harder event to win. And therefore, with that, usually there's more pressure that goes on in your head because it's that negative self talk that comes in and says something like, oh man, you're not going to be able to beat that. This guy's really good. Or that ride or that trick was really good. You can't do that. And so it's just this, I guess for me anyway, you're playing against you're playing a game where that mental game that's going on in here is just as hard as the physical game that you're playing outside of the body.
Yeah, that little like mental peanut gallery.
Yeah, yeah, it gets harder and harder to quiet them sometimes.
Seriously, and then like, you're sitting there like because I had the same thing before swim races. Like that was my biggest thing was no matter how physically prepared I was, if my mental wasn't on, my race would be terrible.
Yeah,
So I'd be like behind the block, and my my mind would just go like, "Yeah, you're gonna swim like shit," and I'd be like, "Why, man? Why say that?"
right.
Then you just convince yourself. So
Yeah, I know.
then,
I've definitely I've been to a couple events where I lost simply because of what I said in my head. Yeah,
mhm. Yeah, we underestimate the power that our brain gives us, or
yeah,
gives the opposing side.
yeah.
I don't know how
Takes
to word
away
it.
maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. I didn't know how to word that. Um, so before I get into this next question, my mom had another one. Has your perspective on dangerous kayak runs and like waterfalls has that changed since you've had kids?
Question. I get that. I've had that question asked several times, and I would say it has changed. It has definitely changed, but not the way that maybe people might think. So regularly, I guess since I've had kids, I've got a 7-year-old son now and a 4-year-old daughter. People would say like, "Oh, now that you have kids, you're not going to be running class 5 rapids or hard waterfalls or anything." And for anybody out there that doesn't know about king or river grades, class 5's like the what they call the highest level. It's just the grading system that we have in kayaking in Whitewater. Um, and and so for me, my answer was always like, well, no, I'm not going to just stop running class 5 or waterfalls. I'm going to continue doing what I love to do. And I've done that. Now, on the flip side of that, I would say that more so now than ever, I am extra cautious and prepared that I'm not going to foolishly run something that is just extra dangerous that I don't need to do. I'm trying to avoid putting myself into unnecessary risky scenarios or situations. And so, because I think it would be extremely selfish of me to go risk my life or possibly die and leave my children without a father. I would consider that really selfish. Where before having kids, it would still be very selfish of me to like, risk my life and die and leave my wife without a husband and widow or whatever, all that kind of stuff, or my mom without a son or my dad without a son. But before having kids, I never thought about it that way. I mean, it just, and I would imagine maybe other people, youth probably don't think of it that way either. They're just thinking like, it's my life, I'm going to do what I want to do. And if I risk my own life, well, I went out doing what I love. Um, I think now after having kids, that's a little bit too selfish of me to consider. but I still run class 5, I still run waterfalls, all that stuff to the same. Now I just make sure that I'm extra cautious. Or maybe extra confident might be the way to look at it, where if I'm going to risk something, or if I'm going to run a waterfall or a rapid that is risky, I want to make sure that I'm feeling 100% ready to go. I want to make sure that I see that line, that I'm like 99.9% confident that I'm going to make that line. Because if not, is it worth it? Like,
Mhm.
where's the risk to joy, levels? Do you know what I mean? And risk reward balance, I guess. And so anyway, I still do stuff all the time that a lot of people, might think is crazy or whatever. But for me, it's just like I feel confident on my line on that day in that moment. Whereas I might go back to that same waterfall the next day or the day prior and be like, not right now. Maybe I'll come back to it. And so it's all about, that moment, what you're feeling, how confident you are, where your skill set is. Have I been practicing for the last, 6 months straight? Have I been, like, just kind of where everything's at? It all kind of balances and adds up to kind of what's going on in the moment for me.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if you're not confident going in and you hesitate or you like, you know, not yeah, that's the only word I can think of. If you like hesitate at like a turn or a point in the waterfall, I feel like that would be detrimental.
Right, and just like how you were saying, when you're on the swimming block and you said, "Oh, I'm gonna have a bad race," you probably did.
Mm,
I've now have, years of experience and a lot of mistakes along the way, that if I start having those negative thoughts, it's game over for me. I don't even get back in my boat. It's like, well, I screwed that up by having the negative thought in the first place, because that negative thought is now more likely to come into fruition because I'm thinking negatively. So I now know, like, if I'm going to go into a risky scenario, I want to analyze it properly. I want to assess the dangers and the risk, but I've got to be thinking positive. I've got to be thinking confident if I want to continue on. And then if that negative thoughts start happening, then I just know, like, okay, well, today's not the day. I'll come back tomorrow and we'll see how tomorrow feels, but today's not the day.
right. Yeah. I can kind of relate to that because I used to play rugby, and a lot of the guys in my first year got concussed like hard, and I never did. And so they came like people would come up and be like, "How haven't you been concussed yet?" And I was like, "Listen, I go into the tackle wanting to get hurt, and so
Right.
I just go through it." These guys were worried about getting hurt and got like they hesitated a little, and that just leads to a whole bunch of issues. So, uh, yeah, you got to be confident, 100%.
Yeah.
One of those scenarios that I wanted to brush up on is your experience in 2015. Um, I'm gonna say this wrong. The Shawinigan River,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, in Quebec. So, if you don't mind, do you mind taking the viewers like through that event? Like, what was going through your mind when that happened?
It's funny. I haven't thought about the Shawinigan River and that event in a long time. I guess probably 5 years. So yeah, we were doing the Whitewater Grand Prix back then, and yeah. Anyway, I made a crucial mistake where we're on this river. There was a low head dam kind of thing, a bad spot essentially that you wouldn't want to get stuck into, and I couldn't see the line very well. It was a wide lip. And anyway, and so I was having someone help guide me off, and they it was 100% my fault, but they were helping guide me off in the spot that I thought I was supposed to be in, and I wasn't. Quickly got into, a bad situation, and within that, I immediately thought, like, okay, this is gonna go sideways real quick. Because this bad spot was also above like another set of rapids and then another rapid and then a waterfall, and it was just like, if I swim out of this, things could go bad. If I don't swim out of this, things could get worse. And so all of these thoughts and everything, kind of the whole analysis was going through my mind pretty quickly. um, and I realized that, like, okay, I've got to get onto the seat of my boat. I've got to pull my legs up onto the seat of my boat, pop my skirt, dive out of the boat, swim to shore, get to shore as fast as possible, and kind of like hope for the best case scenario. And I don't even know if hope would be the right word. Just like work your tail off to like make the best case scenario work. because when you're in those kind of like life and death or just like high risk scenarios, you're not, at least for me anyway, the hope isn't there. The hope's there for sure, but like what's going through my head is it's like laser focus of like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. This is the plan, and make it happen. Like there is
Mhm.
no plan B. There is no other option because I know how serious the situation is. And I've had a couple of those situations through I guess probably, I don't know, coming up on 2 decades of paddling. But I try to have them few and far between, and I try to learn from all the mistakes. But yeah, that was one of the foolish mistakes that I've made through my career, where um, unnecessary risk occurred, and I could have easily avoided it, and I didn't. And yeah, anyway, it went sideways and got really serious pretty quickly. But I was able to get out of the situation, swim to shore, and kind of um, figure it all out. Afterwards, I was pretty shaken, and that definitely kind of threw me off for the rest of the event. I continued to actually, I think the race was maybe the next day or something like that. That was actually in practice, and so I continued on in the event, and I think I maybe even got like fourth overall in the whole event or something. But I was pretty shaken for the rest of it, and usually those kind of situations shake me for a little bit, and it takes me some time to kind of realize like, okay, what was the mistake that really happened here? The mistake wasn't that I went into the whole sideways. The mistake wasn't even that I was guided off maybe in the wrong spot. The mistake was that I put the whole situation in someone else's hands. This mistake was that I didn't see the line for myself. The mistake was that I put on the water and in front of something that I knew was risky without really having a great game plan going into it. And anyway, so yeah, I've tried to learn from all the major mistakes I've made through life.
Man, I'm so glad I could remind you of that incident. That's what an honor. Um, that's insane, man. Yeah. So you kind of already just mentioned it, but how were you able to bounce back mentally from something like that and just succeed later? Because I know in other sports it's not that serious, but you know, when you if you compare this to like another sport, when you fail or you have a bad race and you're stuck in that slump, how were you able to get out of that and then have another successful one?
Um, I guess the gist of it is when when you're in a situation where you've got like, something like that, where you make a poor decision, or life happens and things go sideways, you're just forced to like to bounce back, or else you're going to sit there, on the ground crying about it, right? It's kind of, it goes back to like the whole start of the conversation again with 2020, where it's like, yeah, you could sit there and complain about it, or you could try to like, you know find your way through the weeds, and find that, silver lining, or that ray of light, or whatever it is. It's a little different in this because you're like physically shaken, and it probably took me, it's a little longer because um you've got to kind of get over that fear. But at the same point, I don't know, I can also just tell myself like, okay, I'm going to get back on the horse and go. And I guess like with that event in particular, like I got back in my boat and I raced the course the next day. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there's like an easy answer necessarily. I would just say like the old saying, you get back on the horse. You just try to get back on the horse as quick as possible. And I would say, if you've gone through a scenario where it's life threatening, I'd get back on the horse as fast as possible, but I'd take it easy. I
Mhm.
I I'd go stay in the pen with the horse. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't be going out to the field. But I would try to get back up as quick as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Get back on the horse after it tried to kill you and okay, like let's relax here. And then on the other side of this whole thing, I want to talk about your experience being the first kayaker to paddle over the Detain waterfalls in China.
Oh yeah, yeah, that
So,
was pretty fun.
so what are the Detain waterfalls, and how were you able to pull this feat off?
Yeah, it's a set of waterfalls on the border of China and what was the other country that is bordering? Why am I blanking on this? Anyway, um, it's a set of waterfalls that's on the border of China. I want to say Vietnam, but I'm not certain if that's correct. It might be. I don't know. Anyway, and we were invited essentially to go film a project over there by some Chinese guys that wanted to do a film shoot that we've essentially had connections with. I've gone to China. I guess that was my fourth trip down there, and each time I've been invited to go either film something or compete at an event or different things like that. And so they invited us down to come for a film shoot. And originally it was going to be on a different set of waterfalls, and actually the Detain waterfalls had been on my desktop for like 5 years or 6 years as like a set of waterfalls that I had really wanted to do, but it was really hard to get permission to because it's this bordering situation. You've got to get, government permission, and doing that in China is kind of difficult and whatever. So I had somewhat written it off, but kind of like kept it on that bucket list of like, oh, but it would be super cool to go do that one day. And yeah, just the way the kind of stars aligned, they were like, well, this trip isn't going to work, but we've lined up this other set of waterfalls over here. Do you want to come do that? And I was like, heck yeah, I've been wanting to do that forever. And they kind of lined it all up, and they got permission for like 12 hours or something super short for us to go do it. Like, I think actually like the day after we were done paddling, they got a letter saying like, no, you're not allowed to do it anymore. But we got permission for a short brief period to go run these waterfalls. And yeah, it was myself and my brother-in-law, Dane Jackson. And yeah, things just kind of lined up pretty good for us and took advantage of the opportunity at hand. But so I guess there's twofold to the whole thing. One, I think that there's part of the whole like law the law of attraction, where when you think of things or you desire something enough, you're more likely to have that turn into fruition. And then on top of that, too, just being ready to take any opportunity that's thrown at you. So if I would have said no to the first email, maybe the note, it never would have happened. And I don't know. Yeah, it was an incredible experience. Gorgeous set of waterfalls, great people that we hung out with down there, and it was a ton of fun. And that was all. I think it was. Gosh, that was last fall, maybe. I think it was last fall, maybe right before Thanksgiving or something like that. So right before coronavirus, all that stuff. I'm not sure if I don't know how many people have been traveling down to China to go paddle since then. So yeah, we again, it just goes back to taking opportunity when it comes at you, and yeah, I was pretty stoked on
I
the whole
love when
thing.
the universe aligns like that.
Yeah,
It's just everything happened. I love like the cliche everything happens for a reason when it's just showcased like that. That's awesome.
yeah, it was super cool.
So when you do that, when you do those falls and you're at the bottom and you realize I'm the first one to do it, how badass does that feel?
Yeah, you're pretty stoked. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to run a couple waterfalls for the first time, and it's just like anything for the first time. There's unknown because nobody's done it, right? So there's always a little bit of unknown going into any of those situations, but um, I don't know. I think it makes it that much sweeter when you succeed at the end, and yeah, it's just super cool to complete any first descent for sure. Um, but to find anything that's unknown, and it doesn't have to be kayaking. It could you could relate this to anything. Um, but anytime you take on an unknown, and I think there's something to be said first off for just attempting it because it's never been attempted before. So that alone takes some guts. But when you do that and you're successful, it's like extra sweet. I don't know. It's
Mm,
pretty cool.
it's like a huge relief, but also like, oh yes, I did it.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, it's like Christmas Day times a million or something like that. You're just totally stoked. You're filled like, with adrenaline and all that kind of all these chemicals pumping through your body. But on top of that, it's just like this euphoric situation where you're everything came together the way you thought it would. You know what I mean? Like when it's successful, you're just like, yes, the line and that I had visioned in my mind, I was able to nail that for it to come into fruition. And it kind of just, I don't know, it's a cool feeling for things to just come together the way you hoped it would. and it's even cooler when you mix that with some adrenaline in there for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like the perfect mix.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about living in nature and like exploration for a second. Um, what comparisons do you notice when living in nature or these other cultures and then coming back to North America?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's almost like a two-sided question, but living in nature is more of like the simplistic version of North America. I mean, we travel around, I guess, in a truck and a trailer. We go camping a ton. We're in the outdoors a ton. Even during COVID, we've like set the tent up in the backyard for my kids to go camping, and we'd make s'mores and marshmallows and stuff like that. Um, but it just like there's something cool about I don't know, sleeping under the stars, making a fire, just being out with nature. I think it's also good for the soul, relaxing in a lot of ways, and just kind of brings you down to earth. It's an easy way to eliminate a lot of the stresses that go on in life, probably due to work, social media, electronics, different things like that. Once you unplug and you just kind of get out in nature, a lot of that melts away. And then in the sense of going and experiencing different cultures, and third world countries and different things like that, for me, that's just an eye opener of how there are a multitude of different ways to live life. And I guess a great way to look at this would be here in North America, we don't eat dogs. That would be a crime. Like you would be disgusted to even think that you would possibly eat a dog. But
Hmm.
eating cows, that's totally normal. But
Right.
you go over to India, where their religion, it's the cow is a sacred animal. I mean, you would be against all religion to possibly eat a cow. Why would you ever do that? And then you go over to China where people are starving, and or to Mexico maybe, and people eat dogs because they don't have any other sorts of meat. So it just for me it's an eye-opening experience that like just the way that we have grown up doesn't mean that it's the right way or the wrong way. It's just that way. And there are a lot of different ways that different people live life. And it's not right or wrong, it's just different. Um, and then on top of that, when you're in or when I'm in third world countries in particular, I also come home just with a ton of gratitude for everything that I have in life. To think like I'm so grateful to have running water. I'm so grateful to have clean water to cook and to clean and to bathe in, to drink. I don't have to walk miles to go find water, yet alone have it be clean. And so, to have a flush toilet or a sit down toilet or anything like that. Like there's just so many things that I think are easy to take for granted that when you go and experience life, especially in third world countries, you again for me, I come back very grateful for all that I have.
Yeah, I can imagine that gratefulness that you get when you explore there. I feel like that definitely has like mental health benefits as well.
Oh, I mean, again, I think gratitude is one of the most important things that I can do throughout the day, and I think it's something that I again believe that everybody should try to practice because you can't be grateful and upset. Like when you're grateful, you're happy. So if you want to be happy, just be grateful. If you want to be happy, just think of all the amazing things that you've got going on in life. When it's hard, think about the fact that you might be able to see if you can. Think about the fact that you might be able to walk if you can. Think about the fact that that you might have, a loving mother if you do. Whatever it is, we've all got something to be grateful for. Think about the fact that you might be able to go just turn on a faucet and have clean, fresh water at the touch of a button. Um, Not everybody has the same things to be grateful for, but everybody has something to be grateful for. And so if you're ever kind of, down in the dumps or having a hard time, I think gratitude's just the best way to come out from it. And therefore it's something that I try to practice every day to kind of just continue living this amazing life that I'm extremely grateful that I have.
Yeah, 1,000%. I really like what you said before, where you said that the way we live isn't the right way, it's just a way, because I find that we forget that a lot. Like we'll see something on the news about what a third world country does, and we're just like, oh, why would they do that? That's so wrong. It's like,
Right.
well, it's how they grew up, so they're probably looking at us thinking the same thing.
100%. Yeah. So I mean, that's exactly it. Like the eating cows and dogs is the easiest analogy I have because it's such a vivid image of like everybody eats hamburgers. What are you talking about? Everybody eats steaks. But oh my gosh, you'd never eat a dog. But like you just go somewhere else and it would be total absurdity to eat, a cow, to eat a hamburger. Like that would just be like against everything that they would think of. So again, it's not right or wrong. It's just one way that some people were born and raised, and another way that other people were born and raised.
Yeah, there's a lot of food like that too. Like aside from dog, like there's a YouTube channel. I think it's called The Best Ever or something, and he goes all around the world and tries all different foods. And there's like goat blood soup and like I
Right.
don't like grubs, and like all of us are like, oh, what the fuck? Like, what is that? But then they'll probably look at us killing cows and going, man, what are you doing?
Right. And like so when we were in China for that detained waterfall trip, they had a specialty that they served up all these different types of fried bugs. There was like fried bees, fried grasshoppers, fried slugs. Like it was all sorts of stuff. I Some of them were edible, other ones I had a hard time with. But the whole idea was like that this was like a specialty that they prepared this whole meal um, for us because we were their guests. And so it's kind of like that. I mean, you just you have to take life with how it's presented to you and realize like just because eating bugs might be disgusting to me, I would never want to insult someone who's doing something. Again, we just flip the coin to our side. If someone's coming to your house for dinner and you bake them an amazing cake, how bummed would you be if they show up and be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're eating cake. That is disgusting." You'd be like, "Dude, I just worked for 3 hours making this for you." Um, and so it's just like that kind of all over the world, and there's just a lot of different experiences like that for sure.
That would be such a slap in the face.
100%. Yeah. I mean, again, I try to right now. I've been kind of on and off this like vegan diet for a long time, or at least for a couple of years now. But I know that like I can't if I'm going to travel the world and go like if I'm going to a third world country and I'm someone's guest and they slaughter a lamb for me. There's no question I'm eating that lamb. You know what I mean? Like that, like I would never want to insult someone when they're doing something. Um, Especially for me, and that's I think that kind of situation happens more than we think, but unless you're aware of it, people are regularly just like turned off from different things. And it's again, it's like in Africa, it is normal for grown men to walk holding hands. Like that's just what you do. It's like a sign of like I care for you. You're my brother. I'm going to hold your hand. We're going to walk for 30 minutes holding hands. We might in North America, that's not normal. You don't necessarily just walk holding hands with people, especially not people that like it's I mean, maybe like boyfriend and girlfriend or like any sort of relationship that you have. Again, it doesn't have to, it could be boyfriend, whatever it is, but that's more something that you would do with someone that you have a special connection with, not just a random stranger. So it doesn't have to be food. There's all sorts of different scenarios that some people consider odd and other people consider normal, and that's just how it is. And so the more that again, it comes back to the fact that I'm extremely grateful that I've been able to travel the world and experience all sorts of different cultures because through that you're able to see all these different things. You're able to um, be shown that there's just more than that one version of life. And so, if I was to ever give advice to anybody out there, 100% it would be to just travel, try to experience as many different things as possible.
Yeah, 1,000%. That's great advice. I wish like COVID, man, I wish I could travel right now, but uh as soon as that ban's lifted, best believe I'm on a plane.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're in a tough situation for sure. But again, on the flip side, maybe now is the opportunity for you to kind of make that list of where you want to go. Maybe now is the opportunity to reach out and try to find someone and that wants to go travel with you maybe. Or just maybe now is a great opportunity to learn Spanish if you want to go to South America, for instance.
Hmm.
So again, COVID sucks. It's been hard on a lot of people for sure. But don't waste the opportunity by being negative with it. Think of like, how can I turn this and try to find that positive light within every situation that we got.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of time to plan right now.
A lot of time to plan.
And then in a video of yours, you mentioned that you expose your kids to exploration and nature as well. And I feel like that's such an important thing to give to your kids, especially like right now where we don't see we see so many people kind of metaphorically locked into their houses, their 9 to 5 jobs, to this idea that exploration and discovery is something to dream about as opposed to something that you can actually do and you can like do while you're still here. So that being said, how do we normalize that style of living over here in North America when we often regard it as not being possible?
Are you referring to like specifically right now in COVID lockdown type thing or just
Sorry.
north?
Yeah, sorry. No, I meant like let's ignore COVID for a second.
Okay. Um, I mean, I just think that the best way to, if you're trying to normalize that, in North America, I think the best thing that we can do is realize that North America is one of the most beautiful places on earth. There are incredible places all over us or all over the continent and all around us. Um, and I think we should just take the opportunity to go explore. It might just be going to your backyard. I bet you can go in your backyard right now and lay down and look at the stars and think, wow, I've never seen it like this before. Or if you've got kids, dig in the mud and look for some bugs. There's always an opportunity to look at something through a different light. If you want to reach beyond your backyard, maybe you go to your local municipal park or provincial park. I mean, how many people in Ontario have been to Algonquin Park? I grew up like an hour from there. I was there once as a child. I've gone back with my children and I immediately went to my parents and I'm like, what the heck? This is like the most gorgeous place on earth. And we went there once and they're like, wow, it's pretty far away. And I'm like, it's closer than Ottawa. And we went there a million times. Like, what do you mean? It's not the norm. And so therefore you're not prioritizing it. But yeah, if you're in Ontario, I encourage everybody to go check out Algonquin Park at any time of the year. I'm sure all seasons are gorgeous. But
Hmm.
if you're not in Ontario and you're elsewhere in the world, go find somewhere. There are provincial parks, there are state parks, there are national parks. There's gorgeous places all over the world. And you don't have to travel abroad to go find these amazing places. You just have to look.
Yeah, that's the misconception, or like the idea is like you have to get on a plane and fly somewhere else. You can go in your backyard and find so many things.
100%.
I love Algonquin Park. I used to go there every year growing up before I went off to school, but it's gorgeous, man.
Yeah, really cool spot for sure. And then like within Algonquin Park, so say you've been there, every year since you were a kid, how many more places within Algonquin Park alone have you not explored? I mean, it's a massive park alone, right? So it goes, I mean, there's always opportunity to explore no matter how close you want to stay to home.
Yeah, 1,000%. Another big thing that I encourage, like family member, like aunts and uncles and everything. I encourage this is like put your kid into summer camp
Right.
because I grew up like I would go to summer camp every year, and it was like a lot of kids from back in my school and back home had no idea what it even was or like had never been exposed to nature. But when you're in summer camp, you do the whitewater canoeing, you do trips, you're exposed to nature all the time, and you get this different side of the world that you wouldn't get from your couch.
Right. And it kind of comes back to that same point too of, experiencing different things. When you go to summer camp, and say there's, depending on what summer camp you're at, there could be 10 kids, there could be 1,000 kids. Um, each of those kids has their own way that they grew up and lived, right? And so you're going to interact with people that have all sorts of different ways of living and eat all sorts of different foods and have all sorts of different experiences. And so that's like a great way, especially as a youth, to to be exposed to these different types of living, different types of experiences. And again, it's just something that, yeah, you don't have to travel to China, you don't have to travel to Africa or around the world to go experience different things. You just have to go hang out with people from different areas.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. It's like your own. It's like the kids' little travel travel experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
camp. You go all around the world metaphorically, I guess.
Yeah.
So and then my last question, so I've got two big questions that I ask all the guests at the end. But before that, I want to talk about a quote that your wife said in an article, where she said, on social media right now, it's close to impossible to not compare ourselves to other people. And it's become okay to base how we're doing or how happy you are simply based off comparisons rather than based on how we are actually feeling on the inside. So, do you also experience this comparison as well? And how do you combat these thoughts so that they don't impact both your mental health and your results in the kayak?
Yeah, my wife is way more knowledgeable than I am. She's so smart. No, but I definitely experience life the same way where I think anybody who's on social media probably falls into this trap of comparison with others. I mean, that's almost what social media is built off of. That's why there are how many likes, how many thumbs up, how many shares, all this stuff. These are all just ways to compare one another. How many views, and or how many friends. They're all the way social media is built is essentially a comparison. And then within that, we only post the best versions of our life, and even within those best versions, we make them look even better with different filters, right? We try to make it look even better than it really was. Um, so yeah, I think all of social media is set up as a way to compare each other. Now, how can you combat that? Because I think there's also great things that do happen from social media. So I'm not necessarily saying delete it. Now, maybe that might be the right answer for some people, but I'm not trying to say that that's the only way. Um, because again, I think that there are great things that social media can do and have done. But if you're having troubles, especially with comparison, and again, I fall into this trap myself, maybe it's a good time to just put your phone away.
Hmm.
Maybe it's time to go grab a tea, grab a drink, whatever it is, and go sit and talk with someone that's in the house beside you that you might not even realize because you've just been glued to your phone. Um, Maybe it's time to turn off the notifications. Maybe it's time to, yeah, just shut it down for a little bit and go live life and not worry about who's posting what, who's liking this, that, who's sharing all this different stuff. And it's hard because that, for me anyway, that's a part of um my work, you could say, is that I'm posting and promoting and doing all this kind of stuff on social media. So I've got to be like in it, but I've also got to put my phone away and go play with my kids. So if deleting your social media is the answer, give it a shot. If maybe it means try to set a 30-day challenge where you don't go on Facebook or Instagram, give that a shot. If it's part of your work or whatever and you've got to do it, then stick with it. But make sure that you're, putting your phone away, locking it in a drawer if need be, or just putting it in a different room for a set amount of time, and go have dinner with your family and talk with them. Go, hang out with your parents if you're living at home. Go hang out with your children if you've got children. Whatever it is, like, just go experience life instead of via plugged in.
Yeah, 100%. I find that when I do like an Instagram cleanse or something, it's like a week long every month. You feel so good after. You're like, man, I didn't see any ripped bodies this week. I didn't compare myself to like The Rock. It's been great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's also really why I liked when Instagram got rid of all their likes, like the like option. I found that was great because I knew a lot of people who, let's say their Instagram got 100 likes instead of 200, they would like be so down for the day. Like,
Right.
really?
Well, I mean, the way social media was built was, you get this, I think it's a hit of serotonin. I might have the chemical incorrect there, but it's essentially, there's a chemical in our body that we get a hit similar like you would if you were addicted to drugs or gambling or anything like that, when you get that, when someone likes your image, when someone likes your video, all these different things. And it has widely become extremely addictive because of that. um and so I think again there are a lot of negative side effects to social media, and especially extended amount of time. And so I think it's extremely important for a lot of people to unplug, to go experience, your backyard if need be, to go experience the local park, to go hang out with friends, and just realize like, okay, there is this external world that I live in that is, one, very refreshing, and two, very real. Um, and three, maybe more gorgeous than my Instagram feed could ever be.
Hmm.
So I now, always easier said than done. It's very easy to be like motivated, be like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm totally gonna do that starting tomorrow. But I can't delete it. I'm just gonna check it once. Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, and like, I mean, it's easy to fall into that trap, and that's why I would say almost like start with like baby steps, where you say like, okay, at 5 o'clock, I'm putting my phone away and I'm hanging out with my family, or I'm hanging out with my friends, or whatever it is that you're doing. Like, make a set amount of time where the phone goes away, or the computer goes away, or whatever it is, and you're unplugging. And maybe it's only 30 minutes a day, maybe it's an hour a day, whatever it is. um, Figure out a time that you're able to unplug, and maybe you build up to like taking that 30-day cleanse of social media, whatever it is. But life is beautiful beyond just social media, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, like it's like when you see a really beautiful landscape or something, and you're like, I want to take a picture, and you do, and it's like it doesn't do it justice.
Right, it doesn't. Yeah.
You got to go
i've,
out.
I've got I've got many photos on my phone because I try to, the whole idea behind photos is to capture the moment. um but the most gorgeous landscapes that I've seen, I've never captured the moment. You can never get how the beauty that it truly is in a photo. And sometimes it's almost better to just like not take a picture and be like, I'm going to save this one for the memory bank, and just let it live in eternity in my mind of how truly gorgeous it was, because any photo that I take will almost downgrade it because it will never truly do its justice.
Yeah, 100%. That's great advice. And then these are my last two questions for you. Uh, so with the pandemic and everything going on, there's been multiple reports, and there's not much surprise here that mental illness cases have increased, substance abuse has increased, domestic abuse has increased, and a large portion of these numbers rising can be linked tightly to factors like the huge amount of job loss around the world, the fear mongering that the media gives you, personal loss, this growing uncertainty. I'm hoping when this comes out, there's like more light at the end of the tunnel. But still, where do we go from here, and how do we stop these numbers from rising even after quarantine's done?
I mean, again, I'm not some wise monk that has all the answers. But what I would say is that the greatest things that we can do in hard times like this are a couple different things. One, remember that things can always be worse. Two, um, try to be grateful for what we do have, even if many things have been taken away from us. And three, try not to get too overwhelmed with media, with fear mongering, with social media, any of that kind of stuff, and take time to just be positive, to spend time with loved ones, and just enjoy the day, even if that just means closing your computer, closing all your social media accounts, going sitting by the window and looking at the birds. You're like, it could be anything. Do you know what I mean? Just try to find a moment of every day to set out as this is my time, this is me time, and I'm just going to focus on being positive right now. And again, all of these negative things, that it's kind of like a downward cycle. It's the perfect storm. There's a lot of things going on that are increasing these numbers, and making mental health decline in a lot of people. And I think the best thing that we can do is probably to shut down our computers, to turn off our phones, and just try to enjoy the day in any way that we can. And for me, the best thing that I've found through COVID in particular is to try to just be grateful. And again, for me personally, that might just mean going for a walk down my street and thinking about all the things that I have to be grateful for today. And when I do that, I guarantee I can come home and be just super positive and upbeat and look at life through a brighter lens.
Yeah, gratitude goes a long way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love that. Uh, and then my last question for you, because I get a lot of people reaching out to me about how they're stressed and anxious because they haven't done anything quote unquote significant during this pandemic. So what would you want to say to these people who may be feeling that way? Because, like, yeah, you probably remember when the pandemic started, there were all these influencers and stuff going, look how awesome my life is. It goes back to the comparing thing. They're like, look how
Yeah.
awesome my life is. Look what I'm doing during the pandemic. You should be doing that too. So then
Right.
people are like, shit, I'm not famous right now. I'm not doing these crazy things. I'm doing nothing significant. So what would you want them to hear?
Gosh. I mean, I guess it really comes down to each and everyone has their own kind of version of the life that they want to live. But if, sitting on the couch and watching Netflix all day is the life that you want to live, who am I to say that's not a great thing to do?
Hmm.
Now, if you want to be the person that you see on Instagram that learned how to play the guitar or that learned Spanish or whatever, then let this be the motivation to get off the couch, turn Netflix off and go do that. Go We all live our own lives and only each one of us can change it. So if you want change, it's up to you. If you don't want change, then keep living. If you're satisfied and happy with what you're doing, keep doing with what you're doing, and don't let me or anybody else tell you that you have to change. But if you want to change, let this be the moment where you might think, okay, it's up to me to change. It's not up to some influencer on Instagram. No matter how many videos I watch on Instagram, it's not going to change me because I've got to change. No matter how many Netflix videos I watch, it's not going to change me. I've got to change. So figure out what it is that you want to do, who it is that you want to be, and start taking action towards becoming that and achieving that.
Love it, man. Yeah, absolutely. And then where can my viewers find you?
Uh, I'm on all the social media platforms. So if you haven't deleted Instagram after listening to this talk, you can check me out on Instagram at Nick Troutman Kayak, and that's just NickTrout like Trout Man Kayak. Or check out. I've got a podcast as well that I've been trying to do my best to just give back, to encourage and help inspire as well. And so we've got a podcast called The Art of Awesome, and the whole mission there is just to help encourage people to share anything that I've learned along the way, and also just to bring on amazing individuals and have deep conversations and interviews to kind of help share what other people have learned and experienced through their lives as well. So if you're into that kind of thing, go to The Art of Awesome and check us out, or just hit me up with a DM on Instagram. Those are probably the two best ways to contact me
I love
or to connect with me. Yeah.
I love it, man. Yeah, no, definitely check. I'll put the links down below. Definitely check. I just watched your episode with he was from National Geographic, and he was talking about how he got not abducted. I don't want to say that, but like he got taken in
Yeah.
that, was it
Yeah.
Colombia?
Yeah. I was in Colombia. Ben Stokesbury. He's a good friend of mine. Yeah, that was an interesting interview for sure, and he's got an amazing story. But there's a lot of people like that. We try to have really thought provoking and just fun interviews all the time. And yeah, so if you're interested in the podcast, go over and check out The Art of Awesome for sure.
Love it, man. I'll put that down below. Nick, this has been fun, man. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Harry. This has been a blast.
And all my viewers, I will see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching another episode of my show. If you want more episodes of the H Panel, the button's going to be right here. If you want to subscribe for more videos from myself, it'll be right down below. Please like, comment, share, give 5 stars. Let's keep this conversation going, guys, all right? I'll see you next time. Thank you for your support.